Hi, welcome to your Thursday evening stroll around your celestial neighborhood. I'm Irene Pease, your friendly neighborhood astronomer, just getting set up here for a little, stroll like we do. Um, really excited for tonight. I realized a couple weeks ago as I was going through some comments that I had said I was gonna do another stream about stellar streams, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, I should get around to that." So here we are. This is our follow-up for the stellar streams, and I'm pretty excited because I kinda get to talk about globular clusters without just talking about globular clusters, because there's globular clusters, but then there's, other things here too. So, um welcome. Thanks for tuning in. Again, I'll just try to let people tune in. I'm Irene Pease, friendly neighborhood astronomer, and for tonight, we're looking at visuals using Stellarium, which you can find at stellarium.org, and Open Space, which you can find at openspaceproject.com. And I'll pop this up a couple times, but in case you get bored or whatever, hoping not, there's oh, I didn't edit it quickly enough. There's the website that I just want to share. And I guess I could also post it. Still practicing all the fun things I can do in StreamYard here. So this visualization by Adrian Price Whalen was basically what I used for the image for the thumbnail here. Um, and we managed to get everything in open space, which I'm pretty excited about. But if you want to check out that website, I'll just put that in the comments. So you can definitely check that out. Apparently, Adrian is really into open source software. And so excited to possibly collaborate on other things in the future, because apparently they study stellar streams and cool stuff that I like. So there's that. But yeah, so I probably won't actually be referring directly to that website or showing it in here because, again, we got it to work in open space. Thanks, Micah. But yeah, without further ado, then we can pop on over to our other things that we are looking at. So we'll pop on over to Stellarium, see what's happening in the sky. It looks kind of like it did at 5 o'clock this morning, but on the other side. So hopefully people had a chance to check out the eclipse this morning. If you didn't, there's pictures online, not the end of the world. And there'll be others, really not the end of the world, but it was pretty cool. Um, and yeah, what else do we have? So if you missed it, there's other exciting things happening. I think I want to talk more about Manhattan Henge, but I'll save that for another time, probably next week or the week after. But I want to just do a quick review. It looks like I have in my notes. So if we fast forward to a little bit darker this evening, I think not that far forward. Last time I had asked people to just look for the Milky Way and just see what you can see of the Milky Way. So again, that's going to be coming up earlier and earlier. We have the bright summer part of the Milky Way. That's a little bit easier to see, especially from dark sites. So I can turn off. I thought I turned these off. No, I didn't. um, there we go. So that'll be rising. Yeah, I'll crank this up a little bit. But if you're at a really dark site, you should be able to see some structure in the Milky Way. So it's not just a uniform band, but there's some brighter parts. There's kind of some darker rifts in it. And that's kind of what we're going to be getting towards tonight is really big picture. Looking at some of the structure of our Milky Way and kind of the end from the beginning is a little bit of the history of the Milky Way, like ancient history of the Milky Way. And I have a pretty picture of that at the end. Also, a few weeks ago, I think I asked people to look for Omega Centauri, which was a globular cluster that you could see when Spica is very, very high in the sky. I believe it's Spica over here. So when Spica is highest in the sky, which happens, earlier and earlier every night, right? So now it's happening just as the sun is setting. So it's a little bit late to be looking for Omega Centauri, which would be way down here on the horizon. If you're in the southern hemisphere, or if you're just further south, you have a better chance of trying to pick that up. But that was a nice globular cluster. I thought I'd mention a couple globular clusters that you can see tonight if you have telescope or binoculars. I don't want to get too complicated. So first, we'll look at a fairly open globular cluster. It looks almost like an open cluster, but it is still technically a globular cluster. But it's basically passing through the Milky Way here. So you can see, again, this is kind of the main bulge of the Milky Way. If we look a little bit later, this is, yeah, basically the thickest part. That's the kind of the core. And we're a little ways out from that. But if you're up at a not ridiculously late hour, you see this kind of palm tree shape coming off of the southeast horizon. So that is part of the constellation Scorpion. But I think it looks kind of like a palm tree, right? So if you imagine there's like the little palm, it's like really freaking hot here right now. So just think, yeah, really balmy palm tree kind of thing. But it has this relatively bright kind of orangish, it's kind of a red giant star, but it looks a little orangish in our sky, yellow-orange star Antares. And really close to that is this globular cluster M4. And of course, in Stellarium, they name everything. What do they call it? The crab? The crab globular cluster. Okay, fine. So the crab globular cluster, I'm just going to call it M4. I don't have to get too fancy. M4, it's sort of bright. And as you can see, like it was one of the first ones to kind of pop up, even when we didn't have a lot of magnifications. We scroll back here. So M4, kind of bright, and it's really close to the star Antares in our night sky. So that's kind of a fun one to look for in binoculars or a small telescope. If you don't have binoculars or a small telescope, just look for Antares and the crab, or not the crab, the scorpion, that palm tree shape of the scorpion kind of rising off of the horizon. Yeah, I think that was your challenge. So that's your homework for the week. If you want to consider it homework, or if you don't like homework, just consider it a challenge. So you're looking kind of south. The other fun things to look for this week, if you're, kind of following what's happening at sunset or just after sunset, again, the moon was next to, passed in front of the sun very early this morning. So annular eclipse in some parts of the world and a partial eclipse in others, and nothing very exciting at all in still other parts of the world. But as the moon is going to be plowing, further east night after night, it'll be near Venus tomorrow evening. So you'll have a thin crescent moon kind of pointed towards Venus. So that'll be kind of pretty in the evening sky tomorrow evening if you have clear skies. And then 2 nights later, it'll be kind of up near Mars, which is still out, if you can believe it. Like Mars, it's getting fainter and fainter. I saw it like last Saturday and I was like, oh, wow, it's even fainter than Castor and Pollux. So it's like if you can see Castor and Pollux, these two kind of stars that are the heads of the twins of Gemini, those are actually a little bit brighter than Mars appears in our sky right now. But if the moon is nearby, that's kind of a handy marker. So again, you're not seeing this till 9 o'clock at night from New York, even later from higher latitudes, earlier from lower latitudes. So kind of fun things to look for in the early evening sky. So before we get over to open space, some other things I kind of want to look at using Stellarium. And we're going to do one of the fun things where we just take away the Earth. So hold on to something and don't fall, I guess. So if we move into, our later night sky where we have, there is the Milky Way. Isn't it wonderful? If we could see below horizon, if the Earth weren't there, we could look down and see all this cool stuff in the southern sky. We would see things like the Magellanic Cloud. So here you can see there's the large Magellanic Cloud over here, the small Magellanic Cloud. So we can't see these from our latitude in New York City, but they're down there. And those are basically small, like dwarf galaxies that are gravitationally bound and kind of orbiting around the Milky Way. Why do we care? Well, because the things we're talking about, these stellar streams, they're caused by sometimes globular clusters like Omega Centauri or M4, which M4 is actually passing through the Milky Way right now. That's why we see it so close to that part of our sky, kind of the main bulge. But it can also be caused by small satellite galaxies, dwarf galaxies that are passing by or orbiting around and kind of punching through the galactic plane. Um, so kind of exciting. So we don't really see these in our northern sky, but they're there and just examples. And we'll see kind of some streams from that in a little bit. Okay, but back over to open space because that's where we really want to be. Open space, yeah. Again, if you haven't seen this before, open space is like all real data that we load in here from all kinds of sources. And again, the data that we're going to be looking at, the main show tonight is from Adrian Price Whalen, that website that I put in the comments just earlier. So, yeah, so we don't have all of the stellar streams in here, but a bunch of them. I'm going to say enough, right? So these streams, if I turn on some constellations just for reference, there's constellations. So these are like figures, and you can kind of see what some of them are supposed to be. That's a ram. That's a fishes, because there's two together. That's a whale. I think that's a furnace. That's a sculpture. There's a whole bunch of birds in the southern sky. There's a phoenix, and there's a crane, Grouse, and there's a toucan. Yeah, so down here we can actually turn on some of the streams and you can get kind of a sense of what these are. I wanted to look over, where's Sagittarius? I think Sagittarius is over here somewhere. Or not. Yeah, Sagittarius. That's Sagittarius, right? So there's a Sagittarius stream that's like really huge. And it should be more or less in the part of the sky where Sagittarius is. Bam! Wow! That's a lot of data points. So we'll see this kind of from the outside as well. One thing you'll notice is there's a little bit of a gap in the data. Like someone just took a bite out of it. Like hungry galaxy just took a bite out of our stream, which goes pretty much, wow, like all the way around, and there's going to be a reason for that. We can follow this pretty much all the way around the sky. Oh, there it comes back on the other side. Oh my goodness. So the gap that we just saw, that's for a different reason. But this other gap, if you're somewhat familiar with some of these like kind of all sky surveys of data, you'll notice that there's a gap kind of where the thickest part of the Milky Way is. So it's not that there aren't stars there, it's just that it's hard to look through all this dust and crap, right? So kind of we're missing some of the view of the Sagittarius stellar stream, but that is a huge stellar stream, probably from a dwarf galaxy. We're pretty certain it's from a dwarf galaxy that merged with our galaxy not too terribly long ago. And again, more on that history in a bit. Another one, which now I don't remember where it is. I think it's in the south. There's Palomar 5. I actually forgot to look where this one is. So we'll just spin around, holler if you see it. But Palomar 5, if you're familiar with some of the Palomars, those are actually globular clusters. So the Palomar 5 stellar stream, if we see any of those dots, that was actually caused by a globular cluster that punched through the galaxy and has left a stream of stars leading and lagging it as it orbits around. And oh, there's some green stuff. Yeah, so that's where Palomar 5 would be in our sky. So Palomar 5, again, that's a globular cluster. Oops, I meant to leave that one on. Oh, streams. There's a stream. It's so pretty. And Palomar 5, actually, if I turn on the globular clusters, Palomar 5. That's the one right there. You can see it's like smack in the middle of its stream, right? So some stars leading, some stars lagging. So it kind of gets like stretched out as it passes through the galactic plane. So again, these streams can be caused either by dwarf galaxies or some we think are caused by globular clusters. The other kind of data set that's in here, if you have already visited the website or if you saw the thumbnail, um, there's another data set that's in there that's just the from the Magellanic Clouds. So let me turn those on from our clouds, oopsies, Magellanic Clouds. Come back over here, find the Magellanic Clouds. Um, yeah, so there's a bunch of stars that are associated with those that you'll see. There's a blob, and there's another blob, a little blob around the small Magellanic Cloud, and a larger blob around the large Magellanic Cloud. So there's kind of like a bridge that kind of connects the two. So there's some interaction there, and then obviously getting like tidally stressed, I guess we'll say, um, by the Milky Way itself. So not all of the streams that we know of that we've been able to identify have like known what they call progenitors. So these progenitors, these things that cause it, like the source, the things that are getting stripped apart a bit, getting a little bit tidally stripped to form these streams. So we're just going to move out a bit so I can find things a little bit better. We might zoom in again in a little while, but there was one I just turned on, but again, I don't remember where all these are in the sky yet. There, I think it's the pink one. So that pink stream, pretty sure that's it. That's an orphan. And as its name suggests, we're not really sure exactly what is causing that stream. So there aren't necessarily any globular clusters. There might be a few that are kind of close. And I'm just going to turn off this volume because otherwise we get kind of a weird blinding effect. I'm also going to turn on another data set. So remember all those the little yellow pentagons. Those are all globular clusters. So those are those collections of stars, like up to 1 million or so. Kind of those are our little balls of sparkle that are kind of in the luminous halo, kind of above and below the galactic plane. That can punch through. So those are potential progenitors that could be causing a stellar stream. And then some of the other things that I mentioned were dwarf galaxies. So we have this other data set, I just call the local group. Local, if I can find, right. Here we go. Local group. So those are the green dots, not to be confused with the green dots that were part of, I think, Palomar. But we do see there's a green dot in there, and I think that's Seguade 1. Yes. Seg 1, which may or may not be a progenitor, right? So it's actually not necessarily well understood. It's inconclusive, we'll say. So some people think it might be like one of these other globular clusters. Some people think it might be this little dwarf galaxy. But a lot of this is inconclusive. So it's kind of a trick, I guess, trying to figure out what is the source of these. So there's kind of two mysteries about them. Like one, what is the source? And also like first of all, what are all the stars that make up it? Like, so I mean, there's a whole bunch of stars out here. But they're kind of like not necessarily all moving together. In some cases, you think they're just necessarily moving together, but it's not always that obvious. So we're going to come back in to where I can see the constellations for reference, and just look at a couple other stellar streams that we see in the south. I can find the southern sky again, because there's a relatively new one that's kind of exciting. New paper came out about it just a couple months ago, I want to say. And I'm going to do a shameless plug in here. All right. Yeah. South, souther, souther, super duper south. Okay. So we'll lose the clouds for a moment here. So turn those off. Um, but we do have so Phoenix. Oops. Phoenix is named after, the constellation that it's in. Where'd the Phoenix go? This is Irene trying to find her way around the southern sky. Oh, there's the Phoenix. All right. So you can even see there's like a Phoenix um, label. It looks like there's a Phoenix globular cluster there. So there's that blinking thing. That's the Phoenix stellar stream. Also down there, I said there was a toucan. You still see the toucan over next to the Phoenix and the crane. So there's a toucan. Whoop, toucan 2. So I'm assuming there's also, actually, it looks like toucan 3. So I'm assuming there's also toucan 1 and 2 stellar streams. So there's a toucan stellar stream. There's a Indus. It's over here by the constellation Indus, a little bit smeared there. And then this newer one, Jhelum, which may or may not also be associated with Indus. So I'm going to turn off some of these others and really want to focus a little bit more on those two for a moment. So we'll zip out and kind of see where they are in 3D because they are kind of near each other, not just in our sky, but actually relatively near each other out in space, kind of in I guess we'd say the southern part of the galaxy. So these are kind of interesting. I thought there's some people who think they might actually be from the same progenitor. So like the same, probably a dwarf galaxy, but apparently some groups haven't necessarily ruled out globular cluster as the source. But it might be from the same thing going around the galaxy, but from two different passes of it. So kind of multiple wraps of the same thing going through the galaxy and like punching through it and then coming through again and leaving like another stream. So it's kind of important to be able to identify like all of the stars that make up the stream. So that's like this kind of relatively recent paper by lead author Alison Sheffield, who, if you want to hear more about that, there's a podcast all about it that just dropped on Sunday. So the most recent AAA Sky podcast you can check out. And my co-host interviewed Alison Sheffield, and she talked a little bit about the Jhelum stream and then some other really cool stuff as well. So yeah, I don't know that she mentioned Indus. I think she may have mentioned it in her paper that they may or may not be related, because I kind of read through just the parts that I could understand because I'm not an expert, obviously. But she was looking at not just like how they're moving, so not just the kinematics, like the motion of the stars, but she was looking at, huge groups of stellar data and also looking for the chemical makeup. Because if these things have kind of the same source, then all the stars that are part of the same stream should also have the same chemical makeup. So, and a lot of times when astronomers are talking about chemical makeup, one way to kind of like just kind of bulk that up is to say it's the metallicity, like how many heavy metals do they have, or just how many metals. And again, remember, when astronomers say metals, they mean anything that's not hydrogen or helium. So the rest of the table, all metals. So by looking at that metallicity, then we could see if these are, if these other stars are related. So you can listen to the podcast, and yeah, let me just pop that link into the chat also, because that's much more helpful. Um, uh, and I think if you go to the show notes, there's also a link to Sheffield's most recent paper that was about this. Pop. Boom. There we go. Yeah, there we go. So yeah. So determining, which stars are actually members, look at a whole bunch of stars, narrow down by not just how they're moving and where they are, but also like what is, just a little bit of their chemical makeup. Sorry, I just keep jumping around a little bit. So by looking at these stellar streams, so there's exciting, I mean, like, I guess a lot of job security. There's so much to do with these stellar streams. So I'm kind of excited about these, not just because they have to do with globular clusters, because again, some of them aren't from globular clusters. Some of them are from these dwarf galaxies that are like these satellite galaxies that are still labeled. Um, but so trying to figure out like what stars they are, where they're going, what was the source. So that's like a whole fun thing there. But then using a lot of that information to kind of work back through and build through the history of the Milky Way galaxy. So, like, if you think about tectonic plates, right? We see things like shifting around, and we can see, um, how like different continents have shifted over the eons and whatnot. So astronomers can try to use these streams in a way to help piece together past mergers. So if you remember that really huge data set, boom, Sagittarius. Yeah, let's just zoom out and appreciate that in all its glory. And I'll turn off some of these other data sets. So this is one of the largest ones, and I'll just go ahead and start turning on some of the other streams so you get a sense of like the scale of this thing. We'll leave the Magellanic Clouds off. But these are just several other data sets. And again, you can play with these in the link that I had earlier to the Adrian Preston Whalen's site. Or you can download OpenSpace and play with them in OpenSpace. Um, but but yeah, we can see that Sagittarius is huge, right? It's just like, wow, that's really big. So this is from one of the most recent mergers, probably, as opposed to a merger that happened in the more distant past. Um, Local group. Sorry, I'm I'm realizing that I'm not really good at thinking and typing at the same time. So more recent, but then if we look at some of the other streams, we can start to see some evidence of mergers from the more distant past. Turn off some of this other stuff here. Um, so there's, do I have it in here? There's the before Sagittarius, I think the most recent was the Gaia Enceladus, and some people call it Gaia Enceladus sausage. No idea what. I mean, I guess it was supposed to be sausage shaped, but I haven't seen a picture that's entirely convincing, to be honest. Um, but that would have been a more recent one that actually picked up about 19%, they said. One study said 19% of the globular clusters, another study said fewer globular clusters, but also about 50 billion solar masses worth of stars. So not necessarily 50 billion stars, because a lot of them are smaller, plus other gas and dust and dark matter. So when galaxies merge, like we pick up a lot of stuff, not just the stars, but also the gas and the dust and the dark matter. So the Gaia and Enceladus merger was like apparently a really huge one, but that was a little further back. And then before that, they're looking at past mergers with this other galaxy called Sequoia. So that's where the Sequoia came in. Helmi, and then way back, just recent. I think last year, like late last year, a paper came out talking about the Kraken, which is that was with Croydon, which actually I think they came up with a paper that I'm going to be showing a bit of. I forgot to share one other thing, one other neat feature. We'll skip that because we're about out of time anyway. But yeah, so by looking at these different streams, and unfortunately, like not all of the streams that are shown here necessarily correlate directly to some of those mergers that I just mentioned. But there's this really rad image by it's Cruisen from Heidelberg. So this is going back in time. So the most recent, right, is Sagittarius. That's the one where we saw like all of the orange dots. And then before that, a really massive merger with Gaia and Enceladus, the Gaia and Enceladus sausage. Before that, Sequoia. There's several streams from Helmi that we think may have been some kind of merger or collection of mergers. And then the Kraken was like much further back in time. It doesn't actually have the numbers on here. We're talking billions of years, several billions of years. So 9 to 11 billion years ago. So way, way back in like the early times of the Milky Way. But kind of following the main Milky Way through, we've had like a couple of combinations, and each time we pick up more globular clusters, more stars, more dark matter, which apparently can get kind of lumpy. Um, Let me see if I can just show one thing in here because I'm pretty sure it's in here. One thing I didn't actually have time to check because, I'm spending so much time researching all this other stuff. It's a little bit of sarcasm there. But I wanted to see because this one globular or this one stellar stream is actually supposed to have kind of a gap in it. Yeah, that's the one that has a gap. So this is GD1. So if you're looking on the website, GD1 is that really bright kind of streak, but you can see it has like this gap in it. And so they think that these gaps that can occur in stellar streams might be caused by dark matter subhalos, which, as best as I can tell, that's kind of like slightly more clumpy dark matter. So really cool stellar streams. I'm so excited to be able to kind of fly around them in open space and all the things. Really neat to see like just how interesting and how mysterious they are to kind of track down what stars make up the stellar streams and then what progenitors cause these, like what are the sources of all these. But then the whole other level of using these to kind of reconstruct like what's more of the structure of the outer part of our galaxy where these streams reside and what can they tell us about like the ancient history of the Milky Way. So pretty exciting. Really glad I got around to talking a bit more about this. And thanks so much for joining me. I think next week is our mission of the month, so feel free to tune into that, whatever mission I think it says on my website, but I forgot. Um, yeah, thanks for joining me. Again, for visuals, we were using Stellarium tonight. You can find that at stellarium.org. And of course, OpenSpace, which you can find and download for free at openspaceproject.com. I think the new version is coming out in just a couple weeks. So um, if you've been waiting, maybe just wait another couple weeks and they'll get the newest version that's going to be released. Always updating, always getting new fun features in there. I'm Irene Pease, your friendly neighborhood astronomer. Thanks again for tuning in tonight. I just want to wish everyone clear skies. Be safe out there. And if you haven't yet, go get vaccinated.